What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Dimech.
I'm Justin Perez.
And welcome back to Fantasy Football Stardom Sit-em, where we break down our picks for our Stardom Sit-em picks for Week 14 of the NFL. For my first start, I'm going to be taking Brandon Cooks. Last week, he made his return to the gridiron in a game against the Giants. He had an impressive performance, finishing with 10.6 points after only being projected for around 7. He only finished the game with 3 receptions, and one of them came for a touchdown. However, the 31-year-old veteran surprisingly received a good amount of targets from Cooper Rush, getting 7 on the game out of his 36 attempts. This week, the Cowboys are going to be taking on the Cincinnati Bengals, a secondary that just couldn't stay in front of a parked car. They have been allowing teams to just walk into the end zone and are holding the door for them on the way in. The Bengals are giving up 28.3 points per game, which puts them at 31st in the NFL, as well as giving up 241 passing yards per game. I think that Brandon Cooks can easily fill out the wide receiver 3 role for fantasy owners this week.
For my first start, I want to start Ladd McConkey. J.K. Dobbins is on IR this week, and the Chargers have been a very run-dominant offense. But unfortunately, with the loss of J.K. and the running back room being pretty inefficient, Ladd McConkey is going to have big games in the next couple of weeks. He's received 12 targets last game, and over the last 3 weeks, he's averaging over 100 yards per game receiving. He's undoubtedly Herbert's favorite target, also due to the lack of production from first-round draft pick Quentin Johnston. Kansas City has been having very good games. They've been doing very well, forcing teams to have over 200 yards passing per game, such as the Panthers, who are not a good offense, and the Raiders. With that being said, Herbert being a better quarterback and the Chargers having a better offensive scheme in general, McConkey should dominate this week and easily score 20 points.
For my second start pick, I'm going to be taking DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift has not been playing up to his best of his ability in the last handful of weeks. In the past 2 weeks, he has not broken double-digit points, and in the past 4 weeks, he's only broken that threshold once. Granted, these past 2 weeks have been against the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings, who are two of the best run defenses in the NFL. This week, they're taking on the 49ers, a defense that has been reeling and on its back heels. Last week, we saw them just get run all over by the Buffalo Bills. The injury of Bosa to his oblique has really limited their defensive line's performance, and should he return this week, he will be hobbled as he's being rushed back from that injury to try to salvage this season. The 49ers defense has not prevented a first-string running back from scoring since Week 5 against the Cardinals, and they've given up the 5th most points per game to running backs this season. Swift should be a reliable RB2 and a great flex option this week.
I did not know that. Wow. My next pick is going to be Isaac Gruendo. For those who don't know him, he is the RB1 of the Niners and the 3rd-string running back behind Mason and CMC. He's the lead back, as I said, and he will be getting a lot of touches this week against the Bears. He has no competition at all for carries, as the RB1 and RB2 are out. Their running back room is very scarce. We know that Shanahan is an offensive mastermind, and he will use his running backs and find some way to make them perform well. He has a very safe floor because the Bears' defense is not that good. The 2 weeks that Gruendo received 10 or more carries, he had 99 yards and 85 yards on the ground. He has been able to get in the end zone against Buffalo, and as we know, last week against Buffalo was an absolute disaster for the Niners. But even so, he was able to get in the end zone. So with that being said, if you need a running back, or if you have CMC or Jordan Mason, I recommend picking him up and starting him this week.
For my first sit-em pick, I'm going to be taking Kansas City Chiefs running back Isaiah Pacheco. Pacheco came into his 3rd year with very high expectations, very rarely leaving the second round of drafts. And through the first 2 weeks, he really was hitting that potential. He was averaging just over 16.5 points per game through those 2 games. And then he injured his fibula in that Week 2 game, and he missed all the way up until just last week. And in his return to the field, he didn't look terrible. However, he did not come back to that full volume that we were seeing from him at the beginning of the season. Kareem Hunt was still taking a majority of the touches. He only had a 37% snap rate in the game. And this week, the Chiefs are taking on their rivals in the forms of the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, the Chargers are not the best run defense in the NFL. Definitely one of the better half, but nothing crazy that's going to lock out the run game. However, I don't see Isaiah Pacheco getting the volume necessary to have the performance that we've seen running backs like Derrick Henry and David Johnson James Conner have against the Chargers defense.
For my first sit, I have Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is currently the lead back for the Chargers. They're primarily a rush-heavy offense under J.K. Dobbins, as I said before. Now, with the rise of the passing game, Ladd McConkey, this rushing room has not been well and is not going to perform well behind Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards, as you know, has been a top waiver wire ad because of the scarcity and depth at the running back position in fantasy. But unfortunately, him being the lead back last week, he did not perform well. He only got 6 carries for 32 yards. I would definitely not trust him this week. They also play against Kansas City, who is the #1 ranked defense in the NFL against running backs. With all that being said, he is definitely not a good player to play this week before playoffs.
For my final sit-in pick, I'm going to be sitting Tyreek Hill, someone who is off the board within the first 6 picks almost unanimously in all fantasy leagues. He's been a bit of a disappointment this season. The explosiveness of the 9-year veteran that fans and owners alike have grown accustomed to seeing over the last handful of years is just not put on display this season. He's currently nestled as the wide receiver 20, which is a sharp decline from the wide receiver 2 last season. Despite this step back, Hill's been averaging 12.5-ish fantasy points per game, and last week, he had his best performance since week 1, where he dropped 20 points. However, this week, Tyreek Hill is going to be facing off with Sauce Gardner, one of the league's best cornerbacks. And the New York Jets are allowing just 174 pass yards per game and has only given up 9 passing touchdowns, which is the lowest in the NFL right now. And they're currently just one of the best passing defenses in the league. And there's been a lack of designed plays for Tyreek Hill. Using his speed and agility, he's able to create some opportunities for himself. Like we saw in the last game, his touchdown that he scored, it was a double doink tipped up in the air, and he happened to come down with it just as he was crossing the threshold of the end zone. It wasn't designed for him, and that's how a lot of the play call has been this season, because teams are looking to shut off Tyreek Hill. And I think against the Jets, who have executed so well against wide receivers this season, I don't think it's worth the gamble going with Tyreek Hill this week, especially when you consider that we're getting close to playoff season.
I agree. My last big pick and sit-em pick is going to be another big name that we saw fly off draft boards this year, is Deebo Samuel. Like he said about Tyreek Hill, well, Tyreek Hill was a better pick, obviously, but Deebo Samuel did not leave drafts later than the 3rd or 4th round. Unfortunately, he needs to be sat down. His production this season has not been Deebo-like. He's not the guy that we are used to seeing. Even in an offense that has been injury-plagued like the Niners, we saw Ayuk go down, Kittle's been week to week. Deebo has not had the production. He's been the wide receiver 1, so we've said all season, and unfortunately his numbers just have not been good. He's playing the Bears, who are in the top 15 percentile of the pass. Unfortunately, he'll probably be used as a decoy again for guys, like I said before, Guendo to be used more, and Juwan Jennings, who we've seen get an increased role in this offense. But unfortunately, Shanahan and Purdy are not putting the ball in his hands. He's only scored 20 points once this fantasy season, averaging almost 11 points per game. He's not been doing well. If you have anyone else to play this week, I strongly recommend you sit him on the bench. And yeah.
That's going to do it for our Week 14 Stardom Sit-em picks. Good luck out there, fantasy owners.